something that I've been really blessed with over the past year, more and more realizing it's not as if people come to a church and the church is the people on stage. It's not as if the church is presenting to you. It's like we're all taking part in being the body. I'm going to show up with my guitar, my Ableton set, and you're going to show up with your voice and your audio mixing back in the booth, and someone else is going to show up and just, barely get through the door, and let's do this thing together.
Tristan, what kind of haircut are we going for today?
Great question. I think some on the sides shorter, I don't know, like we normally do, kind of faded into the beard. And then want to take a bit off the top. I don't know, like probably an inch maybe. Okay. Like leave a good bit of curl, but less of it like coming down in the front.
Gotcha. So we were kind of growing it out for a little bit, but now you're like, too much.
Yeah. Or it's more like I liked where it was last time, so.
Gotcha.
It's like,
Okay, so just kind of maintain that. And then do you want the overhang on the sides, or you want that cleaned up a little bit, that it blends a little better?
What do you think?
We can just get rid of some of this length, that it kind of blends from the sides to the top.
That sounds good. Blend it in a little bit.
Sounds good. So Tristan is the music director at Faith Church, where I go to church, and tell us a little bit about what that means. Just to start us off.
Yeah, so the simplest way is I lead our bands. And so it's a fairly standard contemporary music setup. Well, I say standard, but we like to have some fun. So it's guitars, keyboards, bass, drums, and we have a killer team of guys and gals that serve with us. And so we have Thursday night rehearsals, which is a huge part of my job, where my job going into that is to set everyone up for success. As we have a saying, we value excellence and equipping. So we want people to play really well, and we also want to set them up to do so. And so I do all of that, make charts, make tracks, click tracks, all that kind of stuff. We run an Ableton set, and I manage all of that stuff. And then I coach our teams, like, let's do a swell here, let's get from this song this way to this song this way. Hey, you don't know how to play a minor 7 flat 5 chord, let me show you how. We have one song, it's one of my favorite chords. Yeah. You know music, right?
A little bit. So I'm pretty, I'm more know the idea of music than actually like theory. I wish I need to take some theory stuff on the side just for fun.
You should.
But
It's so much, I love theory. I was talking to a friend recently, and it was, we were playing this game where you have like these cards to get to know each other. And it was like, what's something that you like that no one else does? And I was like, I don't know what my answer is. Yeah. And they were like, music theory. Tristan, no one else loves music theory. Yeah. And I love it. Such a nerd
That's
about
so funny.
it. Anyways, just helping out and resourcing the team. I work with our worship leader and our worship and arts director to plan services, vision, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and so that's like what you do for a job, but you also do a lot outside of there with music as far as orchestral, yeah,
and different things. Tell us a little bit about your background there and how you got into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so last year, 2022, was kind of wild. I was super blessed with a bunch of opportunities to play guitar in different bands. Did everything from a rock musical theater show to a gospel musical theater. It was a lot of musical theater. To a gospel musical theater show, to a Queen and Journey tribute show, to a rock through the years, the history of rock and roll show, which was fun.
That is cool.
And it's just, I love that stuff. It's getting to work with a new group of people, and typically, I mean, all of my experiences with actors and other musicians have been incredible. Yeah. And so, and it's also fun. I love music directing, and it's fun to just show up and be a guitarist sometimes and get to learn from other music directors. Because in all those settings, it's part of the band. There's a music director that you listen to, and it's fun kind of crossing genres in the way that I did. But yeah, it's, people say, as far as how I got into it, people say it's all about who you know, and that couldn't be more true. Yeah. The first gig I got was, I had known this producer that I went to church with when I think I've known her since I was 10.
Nice.
She worked at the church at the time, and it's like since then I grew up, and she went on to become this theater producer.
Yeah.
She was like, "Hey, no, you just got back from college. Like, would you do this?" And someone comes to that gig, and they're like, "Oh, will you come play for our theater?"
Yeah.
So on and so forth.
That's pretty cool. And what did you study in college?
Music.
Where'd you study?
Berkeley College of Music. I have a bachelor. It's a mouthful, but I have a bachelor's in music and professional music, with concentrations in some things. But a lot of songwriting, producing, musical theater stuff.
Yeah. So when you think of music, you don't think of what the normal person thinks of as I'm good at music or I'm good at playing an instrument. What you think of is high quality musicianship with really talented people around you. I mean, Berkeley is huge for that. What I talk about a lot in my shop with different people when I tell them my background with church and where I go to church is a lot of people think that, those churches that just have big bands, they're just trying to put on a show. They don't really care about the holiness of the service. They don't really care about worshiping or pointing to Jesus. All they see is this production. Where we're at is a more conservative area, where I've seen a lot more people going back to more traditional churches recently, where you'd think that people would be moving more towards contemporary churches. Where in your experience would you, because for my background, I've always grown up in more of a contemporary type worship set. Yeah. So it's not weird to me. It doesn't feel too much to me. Yeah. Because I also love music. I love quality music, and I think in the church it's a good place for that. Yeah. So what would be your thought on music and production, especially that word production, in a church setting? Yeah, I think a question I like to ask people who maybe aren't super comfortable or not super familiar with big production is if you have a follower of Jesus who's very talented with programming lights or with mixing a big band, it's like, what do you, I don't mean this in a snarky way, but it's like, what better for them to be doing than using those gifts for the glory of God? Yeah. And of course, all of us can use our gifts, whether it's lighting or guitar or cutting hair or speaking or teaching, like anything. We can all use those for our own glory. But it's just, I don't know. I would get exhausted trying to govern that out of every church person that I see. Yeah. So it's like especially when I walk into a church, and maybe they do something that's not my preference. It's like, hey, that's creative. As far as I can tell, this person's honoring God with what they're doing. And I think that's a huge win. So that's kind of, there's this church out in Vegas that does these huge productions. And would it be my preference to attend that church? I don't know. But it's like, I look at that and I'm like, you're in Vegas and you have all these talented performers and like sound engineers and designers and all these things. And hey, if they're willing to use those gifts for the glory of God, I think that's great. I think sometimes people try to assess like, oh, it's just a show, or oh, it's just like, this isn't really for the glory of God. But we don't know people's hearts. But yeah, we get just a small glimpse into people. And I think a big church and a small church have equal opportunity to either be God-honoring or self-glorifying. Yeah. Yeah. That's my maybe 1.5 cents, not even 2 cents. Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a good point, because it's really easy to judge what someone's doing and to just be like, that's really good. But I think it's also easy for someone in a more contemporary church to be like, oh, they're missing out because they don't have that production level. Yep. When I think I've been in places where I was in a certain setting where I was getting really annoyed by the level of production that was being brought to the table. And I felt like the Holy Spirit was saying in my heart that if you can't worship me here, you can't worship me anywhere. Oh, interesting. And it was really interesting, because I realized in that moment that it wasn't about the production. It was about my heart posture as a person in the audience.
Yep.
And then I went to an event where everything should have been ticked the marks of what I like for a worship experience.
Yep.
And I realized I was getting critical.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, oh wow, God, I don't want to ever be so critical about the method that I miss the purpose.
Yep. And I think what you said about it's just as much about you and the audience, the congregation. It's there's not something that I've been really blessed with over the past year is this more and more realizing the church. It's not as if people come to a church and the church is the people on stage. It's not as if the church is presenting to you. It's like we're all taking part in being the body and the bride of Christ. And it's like I'm going to show up with my guitar and my Ableton set, and you're going to show up with your voice and, and whatever else you bring, your audio mixing back in the booth, and someone else is going to show up and just, barely get through the door, and let's do this thing together.
So another question would be, does it matter, because I believe that as someone who's attending a church service, you should be able to worship God with any sort of expression you should be able to worship with whatever's being expressed in worship, as long as it's true and as long as it is honoring to God, as far as how he seeks us to worship him. So there's kind of a responsibility on the person that's at a worship service to worship God with whatever's being brought to them. So maybe you want to go to a church that more fits your preferences or stuff like that. But as long as the worship is true and you feel like you're at the right church for what's going to be there, that's on the person in the congregation to not be critical. What would you consider the responsibility of the person on stage to bring that right message across?
Yeah, I think and all of these are like, I am a 23-year-old music director. These are my humble opinions that could change, could not, and so I don't say all this in any this is the law way, but kind of from my perspective, I think it's get your heart right before God, and in the same way that when you're in the congregation, and also I hope for our volunteers that they're all taking time to worship in the congregation as well. It's like bring that same authenticity and that same be consistently who you are. And so from a heart posture, I think it's all about humility and worship. And if the only time you're worshiping is while you're on stage, I don't know that that's the right place for you to be serving. And then when you get to the kind of the hard skills of being on stage, man, I'm a sucker for excellence. And I think there's multiple ways that you can go about doing something excellently. And something that I have to check my heart on is, am I doing this because I want us to be the best band around? Am I doing this because I want people to think highly of me as a music director? Or am I doing this because God deserves our best and I see something in this team? It's like I'm not trying to pull out anything in them that's not authentic. And I just, and I guess in the same way that I would ask a bass player to spend time practicing and thinking, how can they bring their full selves to the stage? I do view part of my role as how can I make our band and our ensemble more than the sum of its parts, which I think is also exactly what I would do if I was a music director for the Allentown Symphony Orchestra, which I think gets into cool, and part of why what we talked about earlier, why I like playing places that aren't the church as well, is because it's all the same. It's whether the term vocational ministry gets tossed around, or like, oh yeah, I'm working in ministry. But Matt, I would argue you do as much ministry as I do. Your functional role in our society is a barber.
Yeah.
And your role in the kingdom is a follower of Jesus. My functional role as a music director, yeah, it's at a church. And maybe, I don't know, again, this is just my perspective. Maybe this changes a little bit if you're a pastor. But also, what does pastor mean? It means shepherding people. And again, I would say you do that here. I think you can do that from a barber's chair, from from the distillery or the brew works across the road to a church. I read a really good book recently called Garden City by John Marcotte. About just how what we do is we spend so much time working, and so how do we also submit that to God? And part of that is finding what we're good at and being really good at it. Like I would say, and he would say, part of you being a good disciple of Jesus is you being an excellent barber and just doing good work. And so I think, again, kind of to zoom out and see that in any profession, in any role, and then zoom into the guitarist on stage on Sunday. I'd say, man, bring your best, be coachable. There's a quote by Joel Houston from Hillsong, and he said, our job as worship leaders, and I would extend that to anyone on the stage for worship, I think you're a worship leader, is to as quickly as possible get the attention off of ourselves and onto God. And I think you can do that while still shredding a guitar solo. Yeah. You can do that while still jumping around and singing or moving. It's nothing. You don't have to be a statue to honor God, but I think if you're not faking it, if you're worshiping, like that is leading. Leading is doing something. Yeah. Yeah.
And my kind of thought and argument to a lot of you don't need a huge band is that if you think of David in the Bible, he wrote all those crazy psalms that we still rewrite melodies to, and still sing and read and meditate on, that are really powerful. Yeah. But he was innovative in his time. Yep. There wasn't people doing what he was doing in the way he was doing it. And so, in what way, and if you look through church history, some of the most influential music in culture was Christian music.
Brother, oh my goodness, this is something I love to get into.
Talk about it.
Because, this might step on some toes, I don't know that that's happening right now. Or in the past 10 years. Because you look back.
I would say in the mainstream it's not.
Absolutely. Yeah. You go back, so I studied music at Berklee College of Music, which is not known as a Christian institute, it's known as an excellent institute. And you couldn't get through a music history class without talking about church music. Now also, we were talking about the ways that churches were abusing that music, like the way that it was kind of missions were used to conquer places, and which I think, hey, listen, the church has never been perfect. It wasn't perfect then. It's not perfect now. Yeah. I think those things should be called out then. They should be called out now. Yeah. But yeah, it's so you can't go back. You can't go back very far without running into worship music. And then I think where in the more modern sphere, gospel music, music, and if you go back further, it's like the spirituals and the songs that would be sung in the fields while slaves worked. It's like those became blues, which became gospel, which became hip hop, which became pop music, which became. It's like in America, we owe all of our music to Black history. And then when you look at kind of the European things that were going on at the same time, it's like that was all church music, and the spirituals that our music comes from were like songs of, maybe not entirely, but were largely songs of lament and asking for deliverance. And so there is this idea now, and I think it absolutely has some grounding, and I've subscribed to it at different points, that Christian music is not good music. And there is a lot of Christian music that's really bad. And if you can zoom out from the 2000s, and if you can zoom out from the 90s, there's so much goodness. And I think also stereotypes aren't helpful. And so there's no all Christian music is bad. You just can't back that up. And you can't say that it's all good. You can't say that all worship music is worshipful. I think we need to stop trying to paint with such broad strokes. All that to say, faith in music. And I think it makes sense when you back up. Like, no wonder the big questions about life and spirituality and why are we here, who put us here, where else would you express those things but in the arts? I would say music and the arts represent life and all. I mean, it's my belief that all life started with our Creator. Dude, I'm hoping, this might be personal, but I'll say it.
I love it.
I'll say it, dude. I'm hoping to get married early next year. And I'm going to be so glad that Usher put out the music that he put out when I get married. And so it's like, when we say things like church music or worship music is where all music came from, it's such a wider... it's such a wider net than people try to make it out to be, and that I try to make it out to be. I feel like that can kind of free us from the all Christian music is bad or all secular music, which I don't even think is a real thing. Christian or secular music, I think those are pointless titles. But it's like it's all demonic. It's just, I don't know. Everything's more connected than we think it is. In the when I played the Queen show. This summer, we were singing Queen songs. Also, hardest thing I've ever done. That guitar music, hardest musical thing I've ever done. That was stupid. We had to memorize it too. It was awesome. It was a great experience. It was stupid difficult. Love those guys. The theater that I worked with. Anyways, where was I talking? Oh yeah, people would get when we were playing Faithfully or. What was that other one? Who Wants to Live Forever or Bohemian Rhapsody? People just threw their hands up as if they couldn't control it. And our director pointed it out after one of the first shows. He was like, "This is moving people." And one of the singers was like, "That's called the Holy Spirit," which I chuckled at.
So
and then the director, and I love that he said this. He was like, "Yeah, people have all kinds of different names for it, but whatever it was here." It's just cool. The arts are my great love.
And I think the beauty about good music is everything that's good points to God and points to a Creator, points to something bigger. And why not do that in church? And I think to kind of go a little bit off of music and church, just to keep the conversation going. I love that I have some friends, the Marcottes, that are writing music that is married people music, but they're Christian and they love each other and they love people. That Christians can be writing that kind of music, and some people might judge them and be like, "Well, why aren't you writing worship music, or why aren't you writing music for the church?" Because they could probably write some really good church music. But why not write music that everyone can listen to, and that specifically married people can listen to and see the beauty of sex and the beauty of a sexual relationship that is honoring to God, that's not making anyone an object, that isn't making it all about the pleasure that you get from somebody. Why can't the church be writing songs that are talking about loving well in intimate ways?
Yeah, because it's in the Bible, you know?
Yeah.
You read the Song of Solomon.
Yeah.
And I think what I love, and I mean, I'd be interested to listen to the music that you're talking about, not in a weird way, but because I do think, it's like, how do you do that and do it well? And I'll assume that they are. because that's the thing is I think you can have, and this is, I mean, not personal to them at all. This, I would say this about anyone. It's like you can have the best intentions. I feel like Christians do that a lot. And then just write really crappy songs.
Yep.
And so, man, if you can do it well, and be creative, and make something that gives life, I think that's awesome. That's a cool. So that was like their goal. They set out to write music to make babies to.
I don't know if that's a specific goal, but it's definitely good for that.
Perfect.
Yeah. So it's pretty fun. But yeah, it's definitely relationship music. It's definitely that kind of soulful
That's cool.
stuff. I'll have to put some of their music in the show notes. So what are we doing with the beard? Just kind of trimming it out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You faded it really nice last time. I liked that.
Sweet. So kind of final thoughts, Tristan, on this whole subject of music, of church. Where would you kind of give someone who's kind of questioning, where should I be going to church? What kind of things should I be looking for in worship, regardless of the style, the level of talent on this team? What should I be looking for when I'm looking for a church to worship at?
Yeah. Maybe this is 2 cents. This will be more than 1.5 cents.
Okay,
My 2
sounds good.
cents. It's not about you. It's really not about your preferences. I'll say this even to myself, like Tristan. It's not about your preferences, and that's hard for me because I know music and I want great music.
Yep.
And as soon as I take the Tristan Klopp show on the road, like absolutely make music the number one thing. But it's not about my preferences. And so I would encourage people to get an understanding of what the church is, and how to be the church. I think if I were to plant my own church, I thought about this the other week, and maybe I will someday, but probably not. We would be, just because music is who I am, or is a big part of who I am, it would be a lot of music and a lot of like outreach stuff. I think kind of pulling on what we were, I know I'm getting away from music, but
You're good.
What we were talking about earlier, with you're not attending a church, you're being the church. I think those things are way more important. And then if you are a musician, hey, how can you humbly make the team better? I think I would ask that of any of our guys or gals that play with us. And that, even as music director, I'm not threatened by that. If we had someone come who was incredible, who was better than me on every instrument, I would say, that's awesome. Can you lead humbly? Because I've had people say that to me and call me out when I didn't. But anyways, back to the whole picking a church thing. Yeah, if you're a musician, if there's a church around you that is being the church and that you feel like you can grow in your faith in, and they have a great band, I think that's like check. I have a friend, his name's Manny Hampton, and he's a music director at a church in Lancaster, and he's stupid talented. Oh my word. Probably the most talented guy I've ever played with. And I told him when I first took my music director job, I was like, hey, we're doing the same thing now. Like, and we were chatting about it. And his first question when he was asking about the job, I was like a month in, he said, are you growing in your relationship with Jesus? And it had nothing to do with, hey, is your band playing well? Or hey, is like, do you have these opportunities? And so I think that's,
are you using
that's
a click
good.
track well? Are they singing on the click
Exactly.
track? No, that's really cool.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. So what I'm kind of hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the most important thing in picking a church is not, oh, does it sound good? Does it fit my preferences? Does it check all my fancy boxes? Or is this church about what I'm about?
Yeah.
And are they worshiping Jesus with their authentic hearts?
Yep. And I think after that, because this is a hard pill for me to swallow, dude. If I went to a church who couldn't get their mix right, I would struggle to focus. But yeah, I would say heart first, excellence second. which even as I'm kind of known as a sucker for excellence among my coworkers.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope they watch this
Yeah.
and hear that. Yeah, because I mean, it's all under the banner of worship. It's all under the banner of for the glory of God.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. And the great thing is, we can all evolve and change.
At 100%.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Tristan.
Yeah, of course, man. But that's why, actually, roll the mic again. Here's what I think. I want to add something.
Go ahead. Back on the record.
Is I think, because what I was kind of saying after we had stopped filming was that it's hard, as a musician, somebody who cares about excellence, could I actually go to a church where where like the singer was pitchy, they couldn't get a mix,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to sound judgmental, but I don't know that I could focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if that was all that was around, and if they're truly worshiping God, I think that's great. And I think what that leaves space for is excellence in the arts. It's like, man, if there are no churches killing it, but I want to get around good music, find a symphony, find a jazz club, find a band that's killer. Like, because I think we need, especially in the Lehigh Valley, we need more of the arts. And so I hope that there's excellence in both the church and in the symphony halls, in the auditoriums, and in the chapels.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I have to say.
That's a great. I love that.